That is what is meant by happiness in the workplace, which is really about well-being, right? Which is really about being able to do your work the best. Understanding that things are not perfect. Understanding that there are some things you have to deal with, right? Understanding that there are some challenges there, but you can still get work done. You still feel good about it, and you still get a sense of accomplishment. You get a sense of fulfillment. All those come together in the workplace, and that is happiness in the workplace, right? You may not get fulfillment you may not get accomplishment if you go shop, right? If you go shopping, you get more fulfillment. You get happiness that you bought something. Maybe if you bargain hard and you get something, maybe that's accomplishment in some way. So there are the definitions of what really constitutes happiness in the workplace are different. And one needs to be cognizant that one has to be true to those definitions.
There were a lot of people in that mall on that day. And I was just imagining, like, are these all seeking happiness through this feeling that they're getting by shopping, or this feeling that they're getting from whatever? Is it kind of instant gratification and very momentary, or is it a long-term definition? And so what emerged for me in that moment, Sanil, was that it is your ability to, for me, it is my ability to feel good, as you said, feel joy, but feel
Yeah.
pain also, feel tragedies also, feel losing someone also, feel. So all this idea that the human experience allows us to feel, I think to me that was the definition of happiness in that moment.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that is very true, because if you try to pin down happiness, as a single point in time, even for individuals, we're going to be very difficult. And, even between today and yesterday, I think, what made me happy yesterday is probably not the same thing that made me happy today. You're really right. I think it's a varied experience that all comes together. But at the end of the day, I think it's about an emotion, and it's really about an emotion that you really experience.
Beautiful. As you shared about going through the big tech firms in the world that you've worked at and built teams at, and I was also seeing that you've done this certification in happiness from the Berkeley College. How does have you seen that connect? Because what my perception also is, and maybe there are a lot of listeners who are listening on that front, is that it's a cutthroat environment. You have to get the funding, you have to get things right, you have to keep kind of growing revenue, profit. So it is a lot about numbers. And sometimes people lose that happiness, lose that joy of working in the workplace. So how does the joy and happiness of life connect to joy and happiness at the workplace for you?
Yeah, it's a great question. And I think that question also stems from the stereotypical way that maybe people look at happiness too, is that, I think when we think about happiness, there's always this notion about someone is smiling and, and walking, meandering on the road and carefree and not worried about anything in life. And then you picture somebody have to report at 9 o'clock to work, and that's like a stark contrast, right? And they're like, how do they both come together? I think the way to think about it again is at work, for example. If you think about it, a regular, work day, right? You are working on certain tasks which are on your plate and you need to get done. You have to deal with certain challenges in the workplace, maybe a coworker, maybe a manager. You have certain opportunities for growth in the workplace, right? Maybe it's trying to get this next project, or maybe you could work on a different team, or whatever growth looks like for you. And these three things typically come together in a workplace. And the idea of happiness in a workplace is how much can we be in the moment with these three things in a typical workday, and to the extent to which we can really be in the moment getting these three components done is our definition of happiness there, right? So that is what is meant by happiness in the workplace, which is really about well-being, right? Which is really about being able to do your work the best, understanding that things are not perfect, understanding that there are some things you have to deal with, right? Understanding that there are some challenges there, but you can still get work done. You still feel good about it, and you still get a sense of accomplishment. You get a sense of fulfillment. All those come together in the workplace, and that is happiness in the workplace, right? You may not get fulfillment you may not get accomplishment if you go shop, right? If you go shopping, you get more fulfillment. You get happiness that you bought something. Maybe if you bargain hard and you get something, maybe that's accomplishment in some way. So there are the definitions of what really constitutes happiness in the workplace are different. And one needs to be cognizant that one has to be true to those definitions.
Mm.
And for example, if you have one of my clients that was coaching, at a really difficult time working through a PowerPoint presentation, right? So they had to make a presentation in 2 weeks, build it all together, review it and all of that stuff. But just some kind of a block, preventing them from doing it because they really didn't want to do it. They really didn't like that whole idea of presenting, etc. And what was missing in that all of that was their own understanding of what is in it for them.
Hmm.
What is the definition of joy for them in all of that? And they figured out that the joy for them is sense of completion, the sense that they've got it done, right? They don't have to worry about it anymore.
Yeah.
And the fact that when they thought about it, that itself was a kind of happiness for them. Got it. So I would say, in a nutshell, the way you bridge that gap to your original question is you have to understand what are the different markers that actually define happiness in the workplace, and being true to that. And I think then one can experience happiness in the workplace too.
Love that perspective. So, if I were to simplify it further, it's in different areas of life and maybe even different age groups, your definition of happiness could shift, and you've got to re-optimize and reset to that definition to make you feel that joy is what we're speaking about. And I think what this also brings me then is sometimes what happens, Sanil, is that as you say enter a workplace and
Yeah.
you enter as an individual contributor and you grow up and you become a people manager. I was speaking to someone and that's where the conversation is stemming from, is what that person, the chief business officer, that were saying, Utkarsh, people have not gone through the adulting process as a manager. It's like when you're in real life, adulting is hard. Similarly, when in an organization, when you're growing up, the organization is growing up, you become manager to 15 people, to 20 people, you need a very different lens in that moment. And so what I'm understanding is that happiness in that moment will also change. What's your perspective on adulting in the workplace and again happiness around that?
So I think it's maybe your the person you're speaking put it really well, is that it's a needed component in the workplace, right? So now there's some who like it, but they really don't have the they don't know the mechanics of how to do it right. For them, it's more about training, making sure they get the right tools and resources, and they will thrive. Right? So adulting is not a problem for them, right? Because they like it, they just need to know how to do it, and then that's happiness for them, right? I think for some who really don't like it, right? So they're like, okay, this is not something I want to do, and I don't think I like this facet of working, etc. Then it's more of a question about are they in the right role? Is that something they want to do? All right. And what is the driver for being there? Because no matter how much they become successful at doing it, they'll never get a sense of happiness from it, right? Because something, so there's some bit of that. And we do that outside workplace too. Some things in life, we do it because of maybe social obligations, cultural needs, etc. But we really don't like doing it. And we never come to terms with it. We just figure out a way to cope with it in some way. So that's how I would see, is that if you like it, you just need to make sure they get the right resources and mechanics of how to do it. If you don't like it, then I think you have to question and see, is that even the right fit for what you're trying to do?
It's almost like a skill will matrix is what you measure them on. And if it's a skill issue, you give them the skill, but you believe that they have the willpower and the motivation to become
Motivation,
adults
drive.
in the workplace.
Yeah.
Yeah, fascinating, fascinating. If you were to come back to your journey, where did coaching emerge for you personally, Salil? Because I've had these conversations with many coaches as well. Coaching strikes us as lightning because I remember my first experience when someone told me, Kash, why don't you go and get yourself a coach? I was like, what the hell? I don't need a coach and coaching is not important for me. But then when I went through the journey, it was beautifully eye opening that 5 years later, I ended up becoming a coach as well. But what was your kind of motivations to become a coach in your journey?
Yeah. So this is 2000, maybe late 2017. So, and I was the head of innovation in the services company, and a lot of my job was around creating next generation POCs and projects and concepts that we can show to clients and do all of that. And I was having a lot of fun doing that work, and I had a small team that I was managing. Somewhere along that journey, I think at some point, I don't know what was the main trigger, but I asked this very simple question: what do I want my next 10 years to look like? And I clearly remember that was the trigger point for change. Is I just what does my next 10 year look like? And there was the obvious answer, is that I could just go do more and more stuff on the technology route and taking on bigger roles and stuff like that. Um, but then I also realized that everything I wanted to do, I always wanted to have a people component to it, right? And I realized so much so that I wanted that to be like the main thing I do, right? In some way to kind of be able to help people be more effective in the workplace, be more happy. And I said, I want to do something which makes that meaningful and that like the center stage of what I do for the next 10 years of my life. Now, at that point, very interesting, I never had a coach back then, right? And I was not aware of coaching as a profession too. That's when I started exploring and said, what does that even look like? Like, what does it mean to be able to help people in a professional setting, in workplace? So is it training? What does that even look like? And that's when coaching as a profession emerged for me. And I went the deeper and deeper and tried to understand what the process looks like and what is a coach to, etc. And then I was sold. I said, this is what I want to be doing, right? And this is what I want to make the cornerstone of what my next 10 years will look like. And this is going to help me really make everything I do around people and around helping people.
Thank you for watching this clip. If this was of value, then you would love this full podcast episode with the guest that you just saw. I'm just putting this link somewhere left or right of me that you should just click on and watch the full episode. We talk about deep ideas, insights about life, leadership, you as an individual, and you as a professional in this beautiful yet so chaotic world of ours.